Sup, fam?
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Happy Tuesday.
What's up, fam?
What is going on?
All right, we got everybody. Everybody's here. How's it going? So we are here, finally here to talk about the big countdown to AB 3121. It's been quite the journey, but here we are. The task force is set and scheduled to start meeting June 1st. Is everybody excited?
Super excited for me personally from all of the work, right, that folks did to get this actually done and actually happening. So I am very, very excited, and really just want to shout out everybody who has been a part of this journey, as you called it, because it definitely was a journey. And we're going to talk about that journey, of course, today too. But I'll shut up for now. Let my colleagues talk.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Keep digging in. Keep bringing the information to the people so everybody knows what's going on. Give other states the opportunity to get an insight look on what we're doing over here. So I'm super stoked about this. We're doing the real work.
Yep, that's how we do. You know what we do, and we're gonna get it in today. Talk about some AB 3121. I guess before that, though, we're gonna get a little bit into the news, right, Kim?
Yeah, let's do it.
So it looks like Biden has some news about the mask policy. Here we go.
Fight this virus with equity for all. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, there are more Latinos and African American seniors that have been vaccinated as a percentage than white seniors. The CDC made an important announcement. Starting today, if you're fully vaccinated and you're outdoors, you need, and not in a big crowd, you no longer need to wear a mask. I want to be absolutely clear. If you're in a crowd, like a stadium or at a conference or a concert, you still need to wear a mask.
Society, but we shall see. Let's see what else is going on. Republicans announced federal bills to restrict the spread of critical race theory.
So speaking of Republicans, it looks like Liz Cheney got kicked out and replaced. So let's watch this video.
I am absolutely committed, as I said last night, and as I said just now to my colleagues, that we must go forward based on truth. We cannot both embrace the big lie and embrace the Constitution.
Well, first, I wanted to thank my colleagues for the opportunity to serve as the House Republican Conference Chair. I have prioritized listening to all members of our Republican team. I look forward to working with them in partnership, shoulder to shoulder, to make sure that we are fighting on behalf of hardworking Americans. I also want to thank President Trump for his support. He is a critical part of our Republican team.
Wow, that's interesting.
Why am I supposed to care about either one of those white ladies?
I don't know.
Well, really, because
Who knows? I mean, some people do.
yeah, the first woman
It
who
is
was
what it
ousted.
is. All right. So also in this news, looks like a black man, a brother, LaRue Bratcher, is the owner of a marijuana smoke shop out in Oklahoma City. And last year, he shot and killed a man who tried to steal from his business, according to the Atlanta Black Star. It looks like Israel and Palestine are at it again. Here we go.
Meanwhile, Meanwhile, the UN is warning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict could be headed for full-scale war. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem is urging staff to stay close to bomb shelters due to the threat of rocket attacks as the State Department tries to de-escalate the situation. Chief National Correspondent Matt Gutman is there with the latest.
Pronounce her name Saki?
Saki?
Yeah.
Saki to me?
Yeah.
Okay, Saki to me.
Put Saki, but I think it's Saki. Yeah, Saki.
Well, Saki got the jobby, and Simone Sanders is feeling hurt, but I don't know what to say on this one either because we congratulated her on her demotion way back after the election. So I don't even know why this is still news.
Oh man, yeah, it didn't. I think we had a brief conversation about this. Is Simone Sanders? Is she the one who she did the tackle? The linebacker tackle.
Yeah, she went above and beyond to protect Massa Biden, and this is the thanks she gets.
Let's see. Let's go on to see what else is in the news. It looks like Amazon is hiring right now. So let's see what this is about here.
Well, we just heard about how to get a job in the tech sector. And for those of you that are looking, well, Amazon is hiring. We have our Yahoo Finance tech editor, Dan Howley, here with all of the details. Hi, Dan.
Let's see. Do you want to take this $300 unemployment benefits?
Let's take a look at what's going on here. $300 unemployment benefits end in at least 9 states as stimulus hopes fade. Ethnicity, white people were the only ones at any time and at all times under the national level, which is the yellow line that we're looking at.
Great point. All right, so let's see here. Looks like something in the news regarding the movement. And this report was done by Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. So let's check this one out.
6. We turn now to shocking revelations that 2 Ivy League schools, the University of Pennsylvania and Princeton University, have been in possession of bones thought to belong to children who were killed in the 1985 police bombing of the Philadelphia home of the radical Black liberation anti-police brutality group MOVE. In a minute, we'll show you video of the remains being used in an online teaching course and get
of slave ancestors. They didn't want to give those back to the family. So the double standard just continues.
Wow. So I guess let's go on to Gavin Newsom. Governor Gavin Newsom unveils his full budget proposal, including the COVID recovery plan. Funding for tax rebates, business grants, education, jobs were all pitched by Governor Gavin Newsom to the state legislature in his $100 billion budget proposal, which includes a series of programs he's calling the California Comeback Plan, or maybe I should say anti-slavery initiative, to clarify. So let's see what's going on in Senegal.
Senegal is the only African country to criminalize slavery. To this date, Senegal is the only African country that has voted for a law that criminalizes slavery. Senegal's National Assembly passed a law declaring the Atlantic slave trade and the enslavement of African people a crime against humanity.
Speaking about banning, which they should have just banned the next clip and not even done it and green lighted. Yeah, we're gonna check out Gabrielle Union in this. I don't even know what to call it, a skit. Anyway, let's just look at it.
Welcome to Black Table Talk, the only place on Tariq Nasheed's internet where we can have an honest conversation. Today's topic: women in the workplace. Why? I'm your host, Dr. Hadassah Oliyinka Ali Youngman, pre-PhD. And I'm about to take you on the overground road.
How long is this intro? I do not mean to rush you, Queen Hadassah, but Kavya has me on a curfew.
See. No, Gabrielle Union. Black women babies are not allowed to issue curfews.
So before I give my 2 cents, you wanna comment on this one?
I mean, I would say the most offensive thing about that skit, if that's what we're calling it, is that it wasn't even funny. Kind of, I don't even know what to call it, like you said.
Yeah.
New Age minstrel show.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. New Age minstrel, white supremacist ideology. I think that's pretty good.
Let's go with that then. Let's go with that.
So yeah, that's in the news. Welcome back.
So quite a lot going on in the news. And CO, I heard you were going to tell me why I should care about the Cheney ousting. What's that going to mean for, Black people?
It's not going to mean anything for us. It's the same old. It's the same old. The only reason that a lot of people were calling attention to it is because the first woman was ousted essentially for going against Trump, for speaking against him. And that's why when the replacement came in, she made it very clear where she stands, and she thanked President Trump.
I did catch that.
Yeah, it's still that leftover guard are the folks who are still, waiting for Trump to rise again. And it's telling of just where that particular party currently is really all. It's just more tomfoolery.
Hey, CO, you're right. You're super right. And yeah, Kim, when you asked that question, I was like, that's a good question. What does it matter, right? And what you'll hear if you listen to the mainstream, not, what we do sort of stuff, what you'll hear is that this is a signal to the Republican Party, Republicans across the country, that the Republican Party in Washington is supporting Donald Trump still, stands behind Donald Trump, and this has implications, and this matters for the 2022 election, because what we think is that Donald Trump is somewhere behind the scenes and making noise, saying, "Hey, if y'all don't, if y'all are, not supporting me and sticking by me still, even though I'm not president, I'm not going to help you win in 2022." And Donald Trump is still very popular among Republican voters. And remember that Republicans came out more for Donald Trump in 2020 than they did in 2016, right? So keep that in mind too. So that's why this matters, not right now, but it definitely matters, soon.
For the 2022 election. So since the removal is happening now, does that mean that she's just kind of interim, or is there going to be a runoff in 22?
They have those type of elections for, the leadership of the parties, every, so often, right? Every couple of years or something like that, right? Especially in the House. So there's going to be another, election at some point in the next year or two for Republican leadership that includes what they call the conference chair, which is what Liz Cheney's job was. I think that's like the number 3 or 4 or 5 House person, maybe, right? Kevin McCarthy's the number 1 guy. By the way, he's out here in California, and all that goes with that, right? So
okay, I knew my ETM media team would help me understand.
Yep.
Okay, by the way, Kim, before we go on, just by the way, we are going to actually be posting the full clip. It's about 20-30 minutes of the news and review. So that should be posting tomorrow sometime, family. So make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell, get that notification so you could see the whole commentary and what's going on in the news right now.
And folks, make sure you also give a shout out to the family for their amazing video production work. The production quality is on 10. All right, so check us out for the intros and outros and whatever else and all that good stuff. Production quality is awesome. ETM Media, and also call in. You know, we have a call in number. I'm sure it'll come up at some point. Call in. I'm calling in as a show of an example. so you call in too, right? We want to hear from you, especially as we talk about this reparations work.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear from the fam on the reparations work. Sorry, I cut you off, Umoja.
I was gonna say, just don't be shy.
Oh, don't be shy. Call us. All right, so let me share my screen here so we can get into it. All right.
Yes, and what
I'll go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was asking, what are we getting into?
Oh, we're just going to read through the AB 3121 bill so everybody knows what's in it, what to expect, what we're looking at, and then maybe you can help talk us through some of the markups that you guys that we made along the way.
Sounds
just going to read through the bill, just so we know what's in it.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. Assembly Bill number 3121. An act to add and repeal Chapter 4.5, commencing with Section 8301 of Division 1 of Title II of the Government Code relating to state government. Approved by Governor September 30, 2020. Filed with Secretary of State September 30, 2020. Legislative Council's Digest. AB 3121. Weber Task Force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. Existing law requests and regents of the University of California to assemble a colloquium of scholars to draft a research proposal to analyze the economic benefits of slavery that accrued to owners and the businesses, including insurance companies and their subsidiaries, that receive those benefits, and to make recommendations to legislature regarding those findings. Existing law.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Just was making sure you can hear me. Actually, it's probably I know we're early in it, but let's just make a quick note here that is existing law right now, right? Listen to what we just heard. That there is existing law in California that requires that to happen, right? That requires there to be, records and documentation and disclosure of benefits that companies have, particularly right in insurance from slavery, that do business here in California. So let's just pause there and say that, right?
Oh, thank you. Yes, please jump in anytime that you want to bring our attention to that, so we can scratch out the request and put in that this is existing law. Thank you, Chris. Okay, existing law requires the insurance commissioner to request and obtain information from insurers licensed and doing business in the state regarding any records of slaveholder insurance policies issued by any predecessor corporation during the slavery era. Existing law requires insurers to research and report to the commissioner on insurance policies that provided coverage for injury to or death of enslaved people. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and I actually want to see the list.
Yes.
Which companies that are doing business in California right now, other than most of them have some ties to slavery, right?
Yeah, and it looks like the insurance commissioner is Ricardo Laura. So maybe we can have that list subpoenaed as one of our recommendations.
Yeah, it should be public, actually.
Okay, all right, let's find it. Okay, the bill would establish the task force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans, with a special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, consisting of 9 members appointed as provided. The bill would require the task force to, among other things, identify, compile, and synthesize the relevant corpus of evidentiary documentation of the institution of slavery that existed within the United States and the colonies. The bill would require the task force to recommend, among other things, the form of compensation that should be awarded and the instrumentalities through which it should be awarded, and who should be eligible for this compensation. The bill will require the task force to submit a written report of its findings and recommendations to the legislature. The bill would authorize reimbursement of the members' expenses only to the extent of appropriation thereof is made in the Budget Act. The bill would state that any state-level reparations authorized under the provisions are not to be considered a replacement for any reparations enacted at the federal level. The bill would repeal these provisions on July 1st, 2023.
Okay, whoa. Yeah, a lot in there. First, let's start with the title, right? The bill would establish the task force for setting development proposals for African Americans, and then with a special consideration, right, for who, right? So this special consideration language, folks should know that this language makes this bill specific, right, and targeted. And this is the work of organizers here in California. This was not in the bill when we first got it. When we first got the language of this bill, this was not there, right? When we first got this bill, it was basically a carbon copy of HR 40, and it was a good start, but it was not where, we thought we were in terms of how strong language could be around specificity. And we know how important specificity is to the work that we do at CJAC, right? Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, as well as ARCC, the American Redress Coalition of California, right? We have some specific ideas about reparations. We think this reparations effort needs to be very specific and very targeted, right? So that's language, and that language is the work of organizers and activists. I want to give a shout out to everybody who had a hand in that. Shout out to my bro Marcus, down there in LA. Shout out to the whole family everywhere around the state that helped this, and also people from outside the state too. So that's the first thing to say about this particular paragraph, right? Secondly, right, here we have some talk about the structure of the task force, 9 members, and that will be talked about more later, right? Then we have some talk about what the bill is supposed to do, right? And then to talk about a report that's supposed to be submitted. Then we have language that says the bill would state that any state level reparations authorized under these provisions are not to be considered a replacement for any reparations enacted at the federal level. This is also language that fellow organizers, activists, leaders really here in California helped make happen. That language was not in the bill when we first got it. And people should know that some of our other ideas about reparations, right, include that the federal government obviously is the culpable party. So what we don't want to do is give anyone who doesn't want to do reparations at the federal level any excuse not to do it, right? And we can talk about why the reparations need to happen at the federal level. So that this language right here is new, and this came from, again, people like us here on this, on this show, right? I mean, so yeah, just wanted to say that. And obviously the last thing here is that the bill the law will be repealed, or the bill repeals itself on July 1st, 2023. That only becomes important in a very specific situation. And we can talk about that later too.
Okay. Do we have any takers for page 2 here?
I don't know. Do you want to go
Take page 2? 80301A, the legislature makes the following findings and declarations. 1. More than 4 million Africans and their descendants were enslaved in the United States and the colonies that became the United States from 1619 to 1865 inclusive. 2. The institution of slavery was constitutionally and statutorily sanctioned by the United States from 1789 through 1865 inclusive. 3. The slavery that flourished in the United States constituted an immoral and inhumane deprivation of African life, liberty, African citizenship rights, and cultural heritage, and denied them the fruits of their own labor. 4. A preponderance of scholarly, legal, and community evidentiary documentation, as well as popular culture markers, constitute the bias from inquiry into the ongoing effects of the institution of slavery and its legacy. How you say that? Legacy, thank you, of persistent systematic structures of discrimination on living African Americans and societies in the United States. 5. Following the abolition of slavery, the United States government at the federal, state, and local levels continued to perpetuate, condone, and often profit from practices that continued to brutalize and disadvantage African Americans, including sharecropping, convict leasing, Jim Crow laws, education, and disproportionate treatment at the hands of the criminal justice system. 6. As a result of the historic and continued discrimination, African Americans continue to suffer debilitating, economic, educational, and health hardships, including but not limited to all of the following. A. Having nearly 1 million Black people incarcerated. B. An unemployment rate more than twice the current white unemployment rate. C. An average of less than 1/16 of the wealth of white families, a disparity that has worsened, not improved over time. Another B. It is the purpose of the chapter to establish a task force that will do all of the following. 1. Study and develop reparation proposal for African Americans as a result of A. The institution of slavery, including both the transatlantic and domestic trade that existed from 1565 in colonial Florida and from 1619 to 1865 inclusive, within the other colonies that became the United States, and that included the federal and state governments that constitutionally and statutorily supported the institution of slavery. B. The de jure and we're gonna hold there.
Want to tap in real quick, actually, and just point out one or two things, because what you're reading is, first of all, it's really good stuff, right? It's basically so this is the findings and declaration part of the bill, right? This is pretty much the first part after the digest or the summary, and this is this is usually where we're talking about the rationale or the motivation, and the case for why you're getting ready to do what you're going to do in the rest of the bill, right? So let's do some real basic civics, here too, and then also point out that as it, that one a lot, pretty much all of what is being said is spot on, right? And just to point out one or two things that are important that are going to come up a lot is, one, that we are making a case not just for the institution and period of slavery, that 246 years, right? Think about it, 246 years, right, of enslavement, physical, chattel slavery. And then you're talking about, hundreds of years after that, right? Or, 100 or so, 50 years after that, right? But we're not just talking about that 246 years. We're talking about that period, the period, after that and through, let's say, the 1960s, 70s, and then now, right? And then from then to now. So that's the first thing to point out, and that's being said here, right, in a couple of different ways. And then there's some other things that are being said here about how the United States government itself and the state governments themselves were both constitutionally and statutorily, which means like in the law. There's a difference between the law and the Constitution, right? And in both the Constitution and in the law, our enslavement and our after kind of like enslavement was constitutional statutory government action. And so that's why we laid the bill and the invoice and the case at the feet of the federal government. So whenever you hear, you're gonna hear people say, oh, and we heard this in those hearings last month or whatever, right? Those markup hearings, right? Those really historic markup hearings. We heard, hey, it was the Democratic Party who did, remember they tried to amend the bill to say the Democratic Party, and,
yeah, that bull crap. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was crazy. So anyway, I'll shut up now, but I did want to point that out, that this is evidence, and there's super evidence, and that's why that's a really bad argument, and things like it.
Thank you, Chris. Going back to B, the de jure and the de facto discrimination against freed slaves and their descendants from the end of the Civil War to present, including economic, political, educational, and social discrimination. C, the lingering negative effects of the institution of slavery and the discrimination described in paragraphs 5 and 6 of subdivision A on living African Americans and on society in California and the United States. D, the manner in which institutional resources and technologies are being used to deny the inhumanity of slavery and the crime against humanity committed against people of African descent in California and the United States. E, the role of Northern complicity in the Southern-based institution of slavery. F, the direct benefit to societal institutions, public and private, including higher education, corporate, religious, and associational. 2, recommend appropriate ways to educate the California public of the task force findings. I felt like I skipped something. 3, recommend appropriate remedies and consideration of the task force's finding on the matter described in this section. 4, submit to the legislator the report committed pursuant to section 8301.1 together with any recommendations.
So, Chris, did you guys have to beef up this section at all? It's pretty comprehensive.
No, we didn't have to beat this up, but let me say there's something even better than this. There is a 15 or 25 page analysis that one of the committees that heard the bill, I believe it was in the Senate, did, if I'm not mistaken. And it is something that if you remember, I think you were there, Kim, with me in the hearing when they were talking about this, right? And they were talking about how it should be like in the textbooks of California. So
I do remember that. I do remember that document.
Yeah. That is, and we definitely want to grab that too, and share that out too, and I'll try to find it too. But that's better than this, right?
Okay. And I had a question about D, the manner in which instructional resources and technologies are being used to deny the inhumanity of slavery and crime against humanity committed against people of African descent in California and the United States. I mean, they're still trying to ban critical race theory, so nobody's really learned their lesson there. Is that what it's saying there? Is that they're culpable in trying to deny that slavery existed through the use of instructional resources and technologies?
Yeah. This gets to that. Yes. So short answer is yes. This is about stuff like that and more stuff too. But this is definitely about stuff like that, right? About the rewriting of history and stuff like that. And that's been a big problem. And And instructional resources and technologies, right, can be both, like the physical tangible, or, not so much tangible, but like the actual technology and the resources, and then it can also be, the content in some ways too, right? And so if we're talking about what's being taught and what's being shared, in terms of education, that's absolutely a part of it. But then you could also talk about how, they're like the actual technologies themselves can be used to, hurt folks. And let me just say about too, that part about people of African descent in California and the United States, that is something that is a little bit sloppy, right? But in terms of our work on specificity, right? Now, it's not, now this, again, we want to know where we are in the bill, right? So this is the findings and declaration part of the bill, right? So this is where the bill is doing the rationale, talking about why, what the motivation is for us to create this task force, et cetera. Why are we doing this, right? That's the question this part usually answers. And it's so it's sloppy enough to, raise a flag, but it's in a place in the bill where it's not a threat, to be honest with you. And to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with the task force looking into, what it's trying to look into right there, along with the other things it's looking into, right? So there's nothing wrong with the task force looking into that, but we do just want to raise a flag here about the people of African descent in California and the United States. That weakens our specificity, work, right? We're trying to make this, as specific and targeted as possible, and make it as clear as possible about who those targets are.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, good work. Were you going to say something, CA?
Yeah, if you don't mind scrolling back up, there were 2 points that I appreciated in here. Where is it? One was C, the lingering negative effects of the institution of slavery and the discrimination described in these other paragraphs. The reason why I appreciated that was in there, because that specificity, almost to what Chris was talking about, helps to like focus the idea that it wasn't just that, okay, hey, we were enslaved, we didn't get it, and once slavery was over, okay, everything is fine now and we're good. But there were effects that came from slavery. There were effects that spilled into and bled into the disadvantages that African Americans and the descendants of slaves are still experiencing today. So the fact that it's called out here and that's going to be part of the study, I think is a big deal. And then the other one was that the role of the Northern complicity in Southern-based institutions of slavery, because I know through a lot of the miseducation of slavery that happens in America, there's this idea that slavery only happened in the South. Right. So we're in California. That was a Southern thing. We should be fine. When in reality, that's not the case. And we'll probably get into it a little later, but California was extremely complicit, as were Northern states, in the institution of slavery. And while the Southern was very much about hard labor, the North was very much about the textiles and very much about the banking, and did a lot of supporting to make sure that the businesses happening in the South continued. And of course, they benefited from it. So I'm happy that this is called out specifically in the bill.
Excellent work. And what is it that they say? Everything south of Canada is the South. You in the South.
I like that.
All right, page 3, Moya, you got us on this one?
Yeah, let me see if I can get a shot here. 8301.1A. There is hereby established a task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, with a special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. Task force. Chris, do you want to comment on that section real quick before I go on?
No, I think we're good on this. I pointed out that the language is, again, the language in the special consideration that language is new language that folks here on the ground in California, working with, the California Legislative Black Caucus, got in and added to the bill. So I think we're good on this one.
All right, cool. Shout out to CJEC, CJEC in the building. Check us out, cjecofficial.org. All right, let's go. B, the task force shall perform all of the following duties. 1, identify, compile, and synthesize the relevant corpus of evidentiary documentation of the institution of slavery that existed within the United States and the colonies that became the United States from 1619 to 1865 inclusive. The task force's documentation and examination shall include the facts related to all of the following. A, the capture and procurement of Africans. B, the transport of Africans to the United States and the colonies that became the United States for the purpose of enslavement, including their treatment during transport. C, the sale and acquisition of Africans as chattel property in interstate and intrastate commerce. D, the treatment of African slaves in the colonies and the United States, including the deprivation of their freedom, exploitation of their labor, and destruction of their culture, language, religion, and families. Word up. The extensive denial of humanity, sexual abuse, and chattelization of persons. The federal and state laws that discriminated against formerly enslaved Africans and their descendants who were deemed United States citizens from 1868 to the present. The other forms of discrimination in the public and private sectors against freed African slaves and the descendants who were deemed United States citizens from 1868 to the present, including redlining, educational fund discrepancies, and predatory and financial practices. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have a chance, check out our last show that we did with Agent Key Matthews, real estate agent. Great job. Shout out to Kim and Chris. I think CO, you guys were on that show as well. Excellent show.
Hey, you are absolutely right. Big shout out to Key Matthews, Selling Sacramento. She has a show, I think it's every Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. on 97.5 KDE here in Sacramento. And by the way, I am going to be doing that show tomorrow, actually, to talk about reparations. Kim, are you joining me?
Oh, I didn't know that I was invited to.
Okay, well, all right.
We'll offline about that. Yeah, we'll talk.
Definitely. Yeah. But that's going to be a great show tomorrow.
Yeah, always happy to jump in.
Yeah, just check out Chris, fam, on KDEE 97.5. I know we're all across the internet, so I think KDE 97.5 does have a link. Chris, do you mind if you can find out KDEE's link and put it in the chat?
Got you.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the grown folks station out here in Sacramento.
Grown and sexy.
Hey. All right, so let's go on to some more sexy news, right? 2, recommend appropriate ways to educate the California public of the task force findings. 3, recommend appropriate remedies in consideration of the task force's findings on the matters described in the section. In making recommendations, the task force shall address, among other issues, all of the following. A, how the recommendations comport with international standards of remedy for wrongs and injuries caused by the state that include full reparations and special measures as understood by various relevant international protocols, laws, and findings. B, how the state of California will offer a formal apology on behalf of the people of California for the perpetration of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity on African slaves and their descendants. C, how California laws and policies that continue to disproportionately and negatively affect African Americans as a group and perpetuate the lingering material and psychosocial effects of slavery can be eliminated. D, how the injuries resulting from the matters described in the subdivision can be reversed and how to provide appropriate policies, programs, projects, and recommendations for the purpose of reversing the injuries. E, how, in consideration of the task force findings, any form of compensation to the African Americans, with a special considerations for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, is calculated. F, what form of compensation should be awarded, through what instrumentalities, and who should be eligible for such compensation. G, how, in consideration of the task force findings, any other forms of rehabilitation or restitution for African descendants are warranted, and what form and scope those measures should take. C, the task force shall submit a written report of the findings and recommendations in the legislature to the legislature no later than the date that is 1 year after the date of the first meeting of the task force held pursuant section 8301.2 of this chapter. The report shall be submitted in compliance with section 9795.
All right, let me jump in here real quick and chop some of this game up real quick with y'all. So first, what we just heard was what is the answer to the question of what does the task force do? What is the job of the task force? All that my good brother Umoya just read was the answer to the question of what does this task force actually do? Supposed to do this, that, and the third, right? So that's what you just heard. That's the first thing. Second thing is that we heard that at the end that we know that there's a report that has to be submitted, a report, right, that has to be submitted within a year or no later than a year after the first meeting of the task force. The first meeting of the task force, by the way, we're going to find out, or if we haven't said already, has to be had or done by June 1st, which is in 12 days, 14 days, 15 days, right? So soon, right? And then we also saw that, and then there is some sloppy language here with respect to G, right? That does raise a flag. And again, this is something that, this language is not perfect, but we think that because of how we were able to at least anchor this, that we're going to be in a good position to make sure that the specificity and the targeting that we got into the bill language stays and is the focus when the task force actually gets to work, right? But what I'm talking about is that G right there where it says, any other forms of rehabilitation or restitution to African descendants. African descendants is a term that includes both those who are the descendants of American slavery, and those who are not. And our claim is obviously that we want to be as focused and as specific as possible to the descendants of those, whose ancestors are described in this, bill, right? So that's just a point to raise there. And I think, but now there's a lot thing to say on it. There is no, there is no, again, problem with the task force talking about that stuff. But again, when we're talking about proposals, and this is in the part of the bill where they're talking about what kind of proposals, right, should be looked at, I think we want to be careful.
Definitely. So is this task force activity, is it going to be trackable like you track legislative tracking? Like, will you get a ping on your phone when a meeting's coming up, or still too early to tell?
It's early to tell, right? Normally there is some sort of way to follow what, state boards and commissions and task force are doing, some public way. And I think it is in the interest of everybody here, really, that this is as public as possible. So, and that's part of, what I think we all want to see. So the short answer is we don't know yet, but we're going to be tracking this task force no matter if there's any formal way to do it or not.
Right. But I mean, the general public who kind of, wants to follow along and stay engaged. Of course, you can always swing by ETM Media. Like Chris says,
Yep.
we are going to be on it. All right. So, page 4,
Hey,
Article 3. What's that?
can I take this one?
Oh, certainly.
I see you, Chris.
Yeah, I like to read.
All right.
Jump on
Get it,
in.
Chris.
That's right. All right. Article 3, 8301.2A. Right. So this is membership. This is membership. We're talking about the task force membership. Okay. The task force shall consist of 9 members appointed as follows. 5 members shall be appointed by the governor. 2 members shall be appointed by the president pro tempore of the Senate, and 2 members shall be appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly. The governor's appointees shall include all of the following: 1 appointee from the field of academia that has experience in civil rights, 2 appointees from major civil society and reparations organizations that have historically championed the cause of reparatory justice. Not more than 4 appointees shall be members of the legislature. Members shall be drawn from diverse backgrounds to represent the interests of communities of color throughout the state, have experience working to implement racial justice reform, and to the extent possible represent geographically diverse areas of the state. The term of office for members shall be the life of the task force. A vacancy in the task force shall not affect the powers of the task force and shall be filled in the same manner that the original appointment was made. Now, the governor shall call the first meeting of the task force no later than June 1st, 2021, 15 days from now. 5 members of the task force shall constitute what they call a quorum, meaning that's how many people you need in a meeting before you can actually do anything as a group. The task force shall elect a chair and vice chair from among its members. The term of office of each shall be for the life of the task force. For attendance during adjournment of the legislature, a legislative member of the task force shall be entitled to per diem compensation and reimbursement of their expenses for not more than 10 meetings. Upon appropriation by the legislature, of course, right? That's where the money comes from. And lastly here, non-legislative members of the task force shall be entitled to per diem compensation and reimbursement of expenses for not more than 10 meetings also upon appropriation by the legislature. That's the meetings section. Anybody got any comments on that stuff?
No. Well, I mean, since we're talking about the picks, do you guys want to take a quick look at who those picks are?
Yeah,
let's dig in.
Okay, let's take a look what we have here. Governor Gavin Newsom's picks. All right. So, Governor Gavin Newsom's appointments to the AB 3121 task force include Dr. Cheryl Grills, PhD, 62 of Inglewood, recently chosen to serve as President's Professor at La Jolla Marymount University.
Loyola.
Yeah, Loyola.
You're right, Loyola. I said that backwards. Loyola.
Loyola University, Marymount University. In addition to her community-based research, her work focuses on racial stress and trauma, implicit bias, and community healing, amongst others. And I think there's a link there that you can share, Yamoya, with the chat with full bio information on all of these picks if you like. Right. And then we have Dr. Amos Brown, THD. He's 80, out of San Francisco. a renowned civil rights leader who studied under Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and was later arrested with King at a lunch counter sit-in in 1961 and joined the Freedom Riders who protested segregation in the South. We also have Lisa Holder, JD, 49 of Los Angeles, dedicated her career to racial and social justice and systems change. Nationally recognized award-winning trial attorney who has been identified as a super lawyer by Los Angeles Magazine for 4 consecutive years. We have Donald K. Tamaki, JD, 69 of Piedmont, known for his historic work serving on the pro bono legal team that reopened the landmark Supreme Court case Korematsu versus United States. And that had something to do with Japanese internment camps, if you read the full bios. Then we have Dr. Jovan Scott Lewis, PhD, 38 of Berkeley, economic anthropologist and geographer who researches reparations, the political economy of inequality and race in the United States and the Caribbean. Those all sound like pretty solid picks to me. Any thoughts, anyone?
Yeah. So the governor gets 5 picks, right? From what we just read, these are Governor Newsom's 5 picks, right? And these picks were made just recently, like I think in the last 2 weeks, probably. And so these are the majority, really. This is the majority of the task force right here, right? And it will be interesting to see how these individuals work together, right? We know a lot about them individually, but we don't know how they're going to work together, right? You know, it's like any sort of sports team or any team, right? You don't know how like people are going to work together. That's the first thing to point out. And then the second thing to point out is that part of our work here on the ground, right, is largely looking to be focused on making sure that this task force and these individuals in the task force are accessible and that the task force is open and that there's transparency and that there's community input, right? And that community voices are being listened to, right? So that is something to keep in mind here also, that it's these people that are going to be in the task force, but the people listening right now are also going to be a part of this task force too.
I guess my question, Chris, is I know there were some requirements and recommendations within the bill. Do these individuals fit that profile?
Looks like it. And the requirements in the bill are legal requirements. So they would have to legally, do what the bill said. So it looks like folks fit this. And I do know, that there was considerable effort put out by the people making these picks to, make sure that they follow the law, right? So it looks like everybody fits at least somewhere in there, right? There's not more than 4 legislators, right? If you add in the other picks, there's geographic diversity for sure. You've got the expertise is in there for sure. You've got the civil rights angle, you've got the legal angle, you've got the reparations angle, right? So yeah.
Also, one more question before we move on to the next slide. How important, or is it important that any of these appointments or appointees are of African American descent of U.S. chattel slavery? Is that important, or is it more important, or both, for the research and that they are actually of people who've been enslaved here in America?
Yeah, good question, Pam. I definitely want to hear what the community has to say and what the rest of my team has to say here too. But just know that one of the original requests that we had was that the task force looked to, and we kept the request, in spirit and in word, but we really couldn't there's no really real way to legislate that, hey, everybody in this task force has to be a descendant of United States slavery, and that's a legal thing. So, but that was definitely something that we were interested in, and that we were working to make happen. At least to have the task force. So the people who were picking the task force at least look to our people first, right? Because we think we have enough. We have a lot of talent here in California with respect to people from our lineage, and we think we could. You can find 9 people to fit this task force from our group. Not so hard.
Yeah, we definitely tried to get that in there because a lot of us felt that the lived experience of being a descendant of African or descendant of chattel slavery in America had a very specific experience that we would be able to speak to and be able to tie into. Let's say if you had a descendant of American chattel slavery who was an educator, or who was in science, or who was in politics, not only their background in which they studied, in which they work, would bring important issues and items to the table, but their lived experience in that skin, their lived stories from their parents and their grandparents that have been passed down, would only add for the betterment. But to Chris's point, legally there was no way to do that. So our intent is certainly to make sure at least that there are folks there, but we couldn't get it so that every single solitary one on the board or on this committee rather was a descendant of American chattel slavery.
Good points. All right, who wants to walk us through the Senate President pro tempore picks?
I can hop on that. Senator Stephen Bradford, a Democrat from Gardena. Senator Bradford serves as a chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus and chair of the Committee of Public Safety, and previously served as a chair of the Assembly Select Committee on the Status of Boys and Men of Color. Monica Montgomery Stepp. Is that right? Steep. San Diego City Council member. Council member Steep has worked as a San Diego City Council staff member, a civil rights lawyer, a criminal justice advocate for ACLU San Diego, and currently serves as council member of the 4th District.
And down here it says state assembly appointments are still scheduled to be announced as of 5/10/2021. So we've just revealed 7 of the 9 picks, and looks like there are 2 outstanding that have not been officially announced. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct.
All right. Stay tuned. All right. I'm going to go back to my screen here. I think we've got one more page on the AB 3121 bill to get through. So let's finish up.
Let's do it. I can take this again.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, this is
Have at it.
The powers. All right. So what powers does this task force have? So we just heard who's on the task force, right? So first we heard what does the task force do? Well, first we heard why are we even doing this, right? What's the rationale? What's the motivation? Why are we getting ready to create a task force to do this? Then we heard what the task force is supposed to do. Then we heard who's on the task force. Now we're going to talk about what powers does the task force have. And this is Article 4, called Powers. 8301.3A. For the purpose of carrying out the provisions of this chapter, the task force may do all of the following. 1, hold hearings and sit and act at any time and location in California. That's going to be important, right? Because we just talked about how public we want this. And I'm here in Sacramento. I would love for meetings to be held here in Sacramento, right? Which I'm sure there are going to be some, because this is the capital and this is where a lot of these legislators are. But to be honest with you, I'm not selfish. I really don't think this can be just done in Sacramento. This task force, to me, really has to get out and get into the community and get into California and really get to touch people. So that's important. Let me keep reading. Request the attendance and testimony of witnesses. So this is something else that the task force can do. Request the attendance and testimony of witnesses. Request the production of books, records, correspondence, memoranda, papers, and documents. Seek an order from a superior court compelling the testimony or compliance with a subpoena. So there's the subpoena power. Okay. Any subcommittee or member of the task force may, if authorized by the task force, take any action that the task force is authorized to take pursuant to this section. And lastly here, the task force may acquire directly from the head of any state agency available information that the task force considers useful in the discharge of its duties. All state agencies shall cooperate with the task force with respect to such information and shall furnish all information requested by the task force to the extent permitted by law. The task force shall keep confidential any information received from a state agency that is confidential or exempt from the California Public Records Act, Chapter 3.5, commencing with Section 6250 of Division 7 of Title I. And yes, yes, my colleagues, Umoya and Kim, actually looked up that section and looked up that, chapter and got a link for it too.
But do we have that link handy? Do you want to unpack any of what you just read, Chris?
No, I think we're good, right? That's pretty self-explanatory. And this is going to be an important part, as folks should know. The task force is going to be working with the Department of Justice, and that's going to come up in the next section. The task force is going to be working with the Department of Justice. And so that subpoena power is going to matter, and the ability to threaten subpoena is often useful, right? Sometimes you don't have to use it if people know you have it. And then, I think people are going to be cooperative with this task force, but this is just good to see, just in case we need to use this.
Yeah, I think it's imperative because it gives the committee weight behind them or teeth to bite. And so if they want to request information from an institution or from an individual without subpoena power, it's just like an invitation. It's like, hey, when you get a chance, can you send us the stuff? And they can decide to buy in and participate, or they can say, I'm busy, I'm not interested, or I don't support what you're doing, so I'm not going to help. For whatever reason it might be, they can choose to support and to show up or to not. But with subpoena power, what that does is makes it mandatory and punishable with, I believe it's like imprisonment and fines or such like that if you are subpoenaed and you do not show up. So I'm superbly happy that this is in here because there are haters everywhere. So the folks who may try to throttle or just slow down or just prioritize differently, they may not even be against us, but they might not have our best interest in mind. This gives the committee the ability to strong arm if necessary.
Yeah, even when we were talking about the culpable corporations, couldn't they even be subpoenaed to provide information? I don't think that they'd be, willing
That's right.
participants.
They wouldn't necessarily want to share that information because it may or may not open them up to lawsuits. So
definitely a good provision to have in there.
Hey, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, Kim. You're making good points. And if you look at section or that paragraph C, right, it says the task force may acquire directly from the head of any state agency available information, right? So this is about state agencies. But think about what we read in the beginning of the bill in the digest part, right?
Oh, I ain't forgot. I ain't forgot.
Right. So existing law is already in place for us to get records from corporations. And if that needs to be expanded, that may be something that the task force may need to, recommend, right? But yeah.
All right. So Article 5, administrative provisions. Let's see here. 8301.4A, the task force may appoint and fix the compensation of such personnel as the task force considers appropriate. B, the task force shall have the administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the Department of Justice. C, the task force may procure supplies, services, and property by contract in accordance with applicable laws and rules. D, the task force may enter into contracts for the purposes of conducting research or surveys, preparing reports, and performing other activities necessary for the discharge of the duties of the task force with state departments, agencies, and other instrumentalities, federal departments, agencies, and other instrumentalities, and private entities. Okay. Anyone want to take the big one, Article 6?
Go for it, CO.
Article 6, reparations.
Woot woot.
8301.5. Any state level reparations action that are undertaken as a result of this chapter are not a replacement for any reparations enacted at the federal level and should not be interpreted as such. And this is just harking back to what Chris was chatting about earlier, or sharing earlier rather, about how the team wanted to make sure that we included language within this bill that didn't essentially shoot ourselves in the foot for holding the federal government accountable for their participation and their complacency and such. So this is specifically calling that out, even though it was mentioned earlier. It's just specifically calling it out again, that this should not replace or prevent anything on the federal level.
And that's important, being that this hopefully will be used as a blueprint for other states and municipalities so that they can, put that language in their initiatives, so not to, step on any federal reparations. That's very important.
Indeed. And then finally, Article 7, termination. 83.107. This chapter shall remain in effect until July 1st, 2023, and as of that date is repealed. So that's just basically an end date. It's an expiration date, so that we know when this committee comes to an end. So all work, all recommendations, the final request, everything will need to be completed by that time.
All right. Good job, team.
Yeah. Digital hand clap.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen unless anyone wants to refer back to anything in this document.
No, I'm good. Good job, fam.
Chris got it memorized.
Right. Chris, just real quick.
What's up?
In terms of the 10 meetings, let's
put
up the banner here. Do you think that they're going to have like a set schedule, or is it just going to be just random, just whenever they get together before, so they can meet that yearly
it's
deadline?
Probably going to be pretty set in advance if I am right. So it's probably going to be pretty set in advance. Probably in their first meeting, what they'll probably do is set their calendar for the year. It may change, here or there, but I'm sure there'll be talk about calendar and dates, and also keep in mind the fact that that there should be meetings outside of Sacramento, right? So, and all throughout California. So for sure, there's gonna have to be some consideration of that in terms of the calendaring and the scheduling. But yeah, I think if I had to guess, I would say it would definitely not be random, and it may not be complete or 100% solid, but there will definitely be some scheduling done way in advance for at least the 10 meetings that we're talking about, and possibly more. And I think there should be more than 10 meetings.
Yeah, they just get paid for 10. And essentially that schedule will it'll be determined by the folks on the committee. And so part of their own schedules, because everyone on that committee has a day job or is involved in doing something else. So that is going to influence when they can and cannot meet, keeping in mind that they only need 5 people for a quorum.
Yeah, that was going to be my next, question to the folks in the panel. Like, what would happen if the 10 meetings were up? Then people just going to be like, nope, I'm done. I'm not getting paid anymore. Or, hopefully, there'll be some folks that'll be like, nah, I'm in it for the long run. So just, what do y'all think about that? I mean, I guess my question is, could there be a possibility where if they, extend past the 10 meetings, people can bail?
I mean, I guess as long as they have 5 willing to stick it out that quorum. I gotta go grab some water, y'all. But I know we're wrapping up here pretty soon, but I don't want to.
Well, I was going to say to your Moise question. So one, if there are vacancies, then those vacancies have to be filled, right? So that's what the law says, right? If there's a vacancy, somebody leaves, then that has to be filled in the same way that person was appointed. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that the task force can meet more than 10 times. I think they will. I hope they will. I want to work to make that happen. But I don't know if it's too big of a risk right now. And I think what they would probably do is just re-up the money. Like if there was some problem, and one of the task force members was saying, listen, this is meeting number 8, and by the way, I can't really do this past, not being paid. It may not be that I'm a bad person. I just may not be able to afford it. I think that may have been a consideration in the selection of the candidates. But probably if it was, I think that was probably a consideration. But they'll probably just re-up the money, and just add some more money. And I think that's probably the most likely thing that will happen in that case, if that happens.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we're an hour and 20 minutes in. I just want to thank everybody that is watching, and for the people that are on the replay, for hanging in there with us. Thank you for your support, as always, for the advocates and the allies for this reparations movement, this justice claim. And I think that is about it. Is there anybody else that wants to chime in? Do we have anything else, Kim? I don't think we do, right?
No, I just want to shout out to the teams that really put in work to make adjustments to this bill, to make it more specific, and trying to hone into what we actually need. And I will say, over the course of this process, I was one of those folks who were real skeptical in the beginning of like, yo, y'all just need to cut us a check. Like, why do we need to study anything at all? But after sitting in some of these meetings and after talking to a lot of my colleagues, I really got the understanding of yes, I have the lived experience of being a descendant of American chattel slavery. But I don't know all of the effects that it's had in the healthcare system. I don't know all of the effects that it's had in the educational system. And if we're really going to design a program that's more than just cutting a check, because yes, it absolutely needs to be a check cut, but we need more than that if we're going to undo the 400 plus years that have occurred, then that does, we could benefit from there being a study so that we can outline different proposals to address each section, whether it's judiciary, whether it's educational, financial, you know, the racial wealth gap, whatever we're talking about, having like proposals that are well thought out of how to address it. I'm fully on board with now. So shout out to all the teams, Tiffany and everybody who put in work to make sure that we got our hands and we affected change in this manner. And I know, Chris, I'll pass it to you, but you know, you said it best, where like we have come further or farther than anyone else has in terms of reparations. So this is a certainly a proud moment. So I'm excited.
100% cosign everything. 100% cosign everything that CEO just said, and a big hand clap and shout out to
UCO and folks like you, folks like Kim, folks like you, Moya, folks like everybody else, folks like people who are watching and and listening right now. And just to put a pin on what you just said, there's a really good lecture / panel talk that happened. I want to say it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was hosted by Yale and helped by our team in LA, the NAASD group down there, and CJEC family down there. And it was about like, it was called like, global models for reparations or something like that. And so we had the guy who wrote like the 1,000-page handbook of reparations on, right? Which, by the way, I still haven't gotten yet, but it's on the way. It's on the way. So that guy was on, and he talked about how if you look at models of reparations from other parts of the world, they work the best when there's a telling of the history going on as soon or at the same time that there's an effort to have the compensation, right? So these two efforts have to happen at the same time. And to be honest with you, we're gonna have to do some work to get the rest of our American family on reparations like we on it. And we're not there yet. And if we want to get Congress to get where we are, we got to get the people to get where we are first, to be honest with you, if you ask me. And that's our work, and that's work that we're continuing to do. And the result of that work is stuff like AB3121.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I've been barking at people like, oh, you need to get on this reparations. You need to get on what are you doing? Why aren't you talking about reparations? And everybody like, you the only one I know talking about reparations. And they're like, well, I had to make sure, I want to make sure it's real first. I don't want to just seem like I'm just talking some fantasy fallacy. And I'm like, well, it's real. This is a law. We've got a law in the books in California, so it don't get much realer than that. So we do need to, get everybody involved and get everybody engaged. But we are on the job. So,
Indeed.
All right, fam. Well, good work as usual.
Yeah, tell folks where you're going to be. So we're here in the Sacramento area. Me, Kim, and Umoya. CEO is down there in the LA area. So, but here in Sacramento, both you and Umoya, I believe, are going to be out on Juneteenth somewhere here in the Sacramento area, right? Doing some sort of really good political education work, right? And talking about ETM, and obviously talking about reparations too. Where are you guys going to be?
We are going to be in William Lamb Park, and that is on Juneteenth, June 19th. So we are going to have a vendor booth set up and be doing some major recruiting out there. So yeah, William Lamb Park, Sacramento, California. Yeah, come on out, fam. Come on out. Especially if you're in the Sacramento area. But even if you're not, hey, CO, maybe a Juneteenth trip down to Sacramento.
Hey, I'll be at Leimert Park. There's a Leimert Park uprising.
And I heard that they were even trying to maybe do a Bruce's Beach Juneteenth. And I was kind of like, that sounds interesting.
That
But
does sound fun. Black bliss and black joy at the beach. I love it.
Yep. All right, fam. Well, good job as usual. And, peace, love, reparations.